So, Matt, no pressure after that introduction, but perhaps you'd like to just take us through some of the fundamentals of talent management strategy, and then we can dig into the implementation piece and the business case piece.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to work with Dan and Matt for years, and have thoroughly enjoyed the partnership. And for some of you, what I'm going to go over is somewhat redundant, at least here at the beginning, which is what is talent management, and not just what is talent management, what is integrated strategic talent management. And there's a subtle difference there that oftentimes individuals in our profession forget. On the screen right now is a very simple model of talent management. There's a SHRM definition. I don't know if I recommend thumbing through the SHRM glossary at length, but this is particularly helpful. What is talent management? Well, it's an integrated process of knowing, growing, and moving your talent in an organization. And there are discrete processes that make up each of those elements. So knowing your talent, how do you attract, select, and onboard individuals into your organization? Growing them, that's assessing, retaining, and developing, and of course moving them. Succession planning, promotion, talent planning, all of that falls into that move bucket. Really, all three elements are, when you consider all three together and in an integrated fashion, that is talent management. If you go to the next slide, the tricky element of talent management is strategic talent management. That's the name of the webinar. Well, let's talk about what strategy is, and not just what strategy is, but what is sustainable strategy for an organization. Oftentimes in organization development particularly, we're asked to help the organization articulate its strategy, and I have a certain bias as to what is strategy, what is sustainable strategy. Good folks at Navalin Inc. Articulate strategy as the right work, optimally designed, conducted by the right people, supported by the right culture, led by the right people. That is a high level look at strategy. One of my favorite definitions of strategy, however, in sustainable strategy is doing something different or doing something differently. Sustainable strategy is not doing the same thing better than someone else. You cannot create long-term sustained competitive advantage by doing the same thing better than someone else. The way that you create long-term sustained competitive advantage is by doing something different or doing something differently. A quick example from industry that really illustrates this point. For years, Southwest Airlines has been and was, particularly as we look back through the very rough period of in aviation through the 90s and post 9/11. Southwest Airlines was one of the few growing organizations in the world in terms of aeronautics. The reason and the way that they created a sustained competitive advantage is they did something differently than anyone else. So the way that you'd think, well, flying an airplane is flying an airplane, taking passengers from point A to point B, that's the name of the game. Well, what Southwest Airlines identified is we can't do something different. It's going to be an airline, right? You're still flying planes, but what we can do is doing it differently than anyone else. And so they focused on timeliness. They focused on customer experience. They focused on making their back-end processes as efficient as possible. And by doing so, they created a sustained competitive advantage over their peers. Throughout history, as you look at organizations that have been able to create a sustained competitive advantage, they have done so by focusing on different or differently. So if you go to the next slide, a good integrated talent strategy and a strategic talent strategy is one that integrates with an organizational strategy. So what we see on the screen here is an integration and a tie between talent management, know, grow, move your talent, and organizational strategy. What are we going to do different or differently? As you consider the organization's strategy, what are we going to do different or what are we going to do differently, it should inform and influence the way that you know, grow, and move talent. And not just the way that you know, grow, and move talent, but the type of talent that you're looking to know, grow, and move. For Southwest Airlines, the type of talent that they were looking to know, grow, and move for their flight attendants was a focus on friendly, a focus on innovative problem solving, on fun and sense of humor. Those are the types of individuals that Southwest was looking for to deliver on their organizational strategy. So know, grow, and move all by itself, or talent management all by itself, will get you talent moving in the organization. Linking it to the organizational strategy is how you know, grow, and move the right type of talent for your organization to achieve its strategy. When you start to codify that type of talent, when you start to articulate what that talent looks like, the specific type of talent that is needed and required for your organization to achieve its strategy, that is a competency model. Now, many of us come from organizations that have articulated its competency model, or simply bought a competency model from a vendor and hung it on the wall and baked it into our performance reviews, and that's as far as it's gone. A true integrated talent strategy includes a competency model that aligns with that strategy. So as you look at the 10 or 12 crucial competencies for your organizations, you should be able to see in that competency model the story of your organization's strategy. Now, any one particular role wouldn't be expected to embody all 10 or 12 competencies. However, as you look at that competency model, you should be able to see here is our strategy articulated in the way that our people need to show up. So done right and done well, strategic talent management begins with and focuses first on the articulation of a competency model that reflects the organization's strategy uniquely. To go to the next slide, there's a very simple and probably highly recognizable example of that process. So here's what we're talking about. Competencies root into the talent management process. So if I've articulated a competency model that reflects my organization's strategy, right? So I look at these 10 or 12 and I say, if we possess these 10 or 12, or if these 10 or 12 competencies show up in a significant way in our organization, we have confidence that we'll be able to achieve our strategy. Then you tie in talent management process into that competency model. So, for example, my attraction and selection processes are going to root to don't just get me talent or don't just give me good talent, give me talent that is uniquely aligned with where our organization is trying to go. As you think about development programs, as you think about leadership development programs, not just leadership development programs that are generalist in nature, but leadership development programs that tie specifically into the organization's ability to achieve its strategy and manifest through the competency model. Same with onboarding programs. So as we look at onboarding programs, how do we introduce talent to the strategy, to the culture, and to the behaviors that are predictive of success in this organization, manifest through the competency model. So as you look around the dial, attracting and selecting, onboarding, assessing, retaining, developing, succession, promotion, all of these elements should root themselves in that strategically aligned competency model. That is when you start to realize strategic talent management instead of simply talent management. You go to the next slide. An example from industry, I think, helps clarify this point. Most of us are familiar with the two organizations who are listed below, Chick-fil-A and Apple. If you're not, Chick-fil-A is a quick service restaurant and headquartered in Atlanta, and Apple at this point fairly ubiquitous. So a little thought exercise for you on the call. As we think about these two organizations, what does the talent need to look like to achieve its strategy? Well, let's think about what is the sustainable strategy of Chick-fil-A. What creates a sustainable competitive advantage for Chick-fil-A? Well, it is the fact that they are ridiculously friendly, right? That they've made it a clear point of differentiation from their competitors, that they are going to be excessively friendly and excessively clean. If you go into their stores, their restaurants, they're spotless. So what does a good employee look like, or what does a good leader in that organization look like? A good leader looks like one that can inspire a customer-centered focus for their employees. A good employee is one that will own problems at the lowest level and will work collaboratively with their teammates. Right? We start to articulate the competencies that align with the strategy. Apple, what's their sustained competitive advantage? It's innovation. It's very clear that they are looking to innovate in their and that's how that is the type of talent that they're looking for. So what does a good employee look like at Apple? It's one that's innovative, one that thinks outside the box, one that's not afraid to challenge the status quo. What does a good leader look like in that organization? It's one that will champion new ideas, that will direct resources quickly to emerging ideas and technologies. So what you can start to see in these two very disparate examples is that talent is not created equal for these two. Someone that is simply quote unquote talented may flourish or not, depending on the strategy of the organization. Apple is looking for a very specific type of individual to know, grow, and move to help them achieve their strategy. Same with Chick-fil-A. They're looking for a very specific type of talent to know, grow, and move to help them achieve their strategy. You keep going to the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about the process of talent management. We've talked about competencies, so this process of talent management is also important. And all of these processes that we've mentioned, selection, onboarding, succession planning, leadership development, all of those around the dial that we had mentioned previously, they all follow the same four-step pattern. All talent management processes begin with a triggering event, something that says to the organization, it's time to engage a talent management process. That talent management process then leads to HR or organization development or talent management or learning development activity. The triggering event tells the talent management team to engage and do something. That activity will always lead to some sort of assessment. Now, assessment doesn't necessarily mean give somebody a personality quiz. Assessment means collection of data. And that data will lead to a decision point. And an example that is fairly clean and obvious is talent management process of selection. Right? What's the triggering event in selection? Well, the triggering event in selection is that we have cold candidates for a position that's been posted and is open in our organization. The HR activity that's going to occur is setting up interviews, is perhaps it's a revision and a review of the job description. It is counseling with the hiring manager on what success in the position looks like. And ultimately, it leads into assessment activity. Now, the scope of that assessment activity might differ depending on the role. If you're hiring your CEO, you might put them through some personality assessment. You might put them through some case study assessment. You put them through a series of interviews with a broad range of individuals. You look at their resume. All of those are assessment activities that bring data together to allow for a decision. And then you reach a decision point and then you move forward. All talent management process follows this same pattern. And it is the way in which we allow the organization to make decisions about talent, about who we know, how we grow them, who we move, in a way that is consistent with the strategy that they've articulated. So if you keep going. So we have really two pieces of work that have to occur from a talent management leader. So if you sit in the executive seat in talent management, there's two pieces of work that has to be done. First is how your organization is going to define that talent management process, right? So if it is selection, or if it is onboarding, your onboarding mechanisms, if it's your leadership development mechanisms, if it's your succession planning mechanisms, there is work to do in defining who owns those, who are stakeholders, who has vested interest in those various processes, what are the triggering events, and then how do you hardwire best practice activity in those elements. Perhaps most important for the talent management executive is to determine who is going to do what once the data has been collected, once assessment has occurred, and we're at a decision point. Who makes the decisions on various talent management processes under what guidelines? So talent management process is really about governance, and there is and it is important work that has to occur to create an integrated and strategic talent management process. The second stream of work that has to occur is in the delivery of that process. So if you are going to have a leadership development program, and you define governance, who defines who a leader is, and what and how that aligns with the competency model, and how do we know that someone comes into the stream, and as well as how do we decide when they're ready to graduate or be selected for selective or elements of our leadership development program. All of that is process. There is the delivery aspect that is just as crucial, and the delivery is the curriculum. It is the actual work of development. That is the focus area for the talent management executive in that stream is to drive consistency of process. So are we following the same process universally throughout the organization? Are we being innovative in the delivery of that talent management? Are we finding ways to leverage technology to collect data in effective ways that don't add administrative burden to the organization? Are we instilling accountability and transparency in the talent management delivery? And are we making the delivery mechanisms a catalyst for the process that we're trying to drive in the organization? Both streams of work are critical. You have to have a very clearly defined process, talent management process, as well as innovative and consistent delivery that instills accountability and transparency. Go to the next slide.
Yeah, so Matt, thanks so much for that. I want to pick up on something you said right at the beginning, really, which is that there's a difference between talent management and talent management strategy. And I think what you've just given us is a fantastic overview of the fundamentals of how talent management becomes strategic. And the next section of this broadcast, for the next sort of 10 to 15 minutes, we're really going to dig into how you apply this, how you get the leadership in the organization excited about it, then how you build the business case for it. And I think you shared some excellent examples of how talent management strategy, if correctly applied, can really add value to a business. What I'm interested in is how you get the business excited about this, because I guess there's a danger that talent management is seen as a purely functional aspect of the business. It's a go-do rather than something that can really align to the strategy of the company. So how do you build a buzz about talent management strategy within the organization?
It is not easy, right? Let's just start with that, which is oftentimes talent management is seen as a highly functional role, right? We have to get performance evaluations done, and so it becomes a transactional process instead of a process that drives the organization forward. If you go to the next slide, there's a nice descriptor of how I view it. We've already talked about strategy and how strategy articulates or informs your competency model. Once you have done that work of creating a competency model that is strategically aligned, that should flow into evaluation of your organization from a role-to-role basis. Now, do you have to evaluate every role in the organization? Probably not. But you do need to identify and evaluate roles that are strategically and operationally critical. So as you evaluate the specific roles in the organization, you partner with the business, with the executive team to say, what roles do we have to be great at to keep the lights on, obviously, but also to achieve our organizational strategy. You can even create a matrix of strategically and operationally critical so that you can really begin to identify and hone in on what are the most important roles for our organization. Once you've identified that list of what are the roles that are most critical, then you start to craft a profile of the perfect example of that role. So I'll pull an example from my industry in healthcare. Let's say that we've identified the nurse manager as a crucial role in the organization, both strategically and operationally. My work would then be to start to craft a success profile of that role. What are the knowledge, skills, and abilities that role needs to possess? What are the competencies as articulated to my organization? What are the competencies that are crucial, as well as what are the future trends that are important for this role? What are the relationships that they have to manage? You have to have articulated that for the role. What is the exemplar of this role? Once you have that, once you have articulated the ultimate example or exemplar of that role, then you can start to evaluate individuals against that standard. So then you plug that standard into your talent management process and say, I'm not just going to select, I'm going to select against this success profile. I'm not just going to onboard, I'm going to onboard against this profile. I'm not going to just look at succession planning or run a succession planning, throw people into a 9-box. I'm going to do so against this success profile. What that also allows you to do as a talent management executive is it allows you to build out a development library that actually reflects the needs of the business. So once I have 50 roles that I've taken through and built success profiles on, then I can evaluate and say, 45 out of these 50 roles have to be able to craft a pro forma. I should build content that supports that development for those that don't have it. I see that 40 out of my 50 success profiles include working collaboratively as a critical and required competency. I need to make sure that my development programs support that, or that my screening tools pre-employment include that.
Yeah.
This is how you get a seat at the. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
How you get the seat at the table.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It sounds that is how you get the seat at the table. And also, I suppose, just a follow-on question. It sounds as if you don't have to try and boil the ocean here. You might pick the 2 or 3 roles that you think are critical to the strategy for that year, and really just focus on those to show the business, to get some quick wins, and to show the business that this can have a fairly rapid impact.
Absolutely, and it allows you to show that not just the work that you do from a process standpoint, but the curriculum and the content that you build is solely focused on helping the organization deliver its strategy, and that's how you get a seat at the table. You don't get a seat at the table by saying, "Here's a great process and let's get excited by it." You get a seat at the table by saying, "Let's get this organization more of the talent it needs to develop its strategy." And my role is to, as talent management individual, is to bring best practice on getting you more of the talent that you need. The organization will be much more interested in those talent management processes if they've had a hand in crafting what exemplary looks like in the role, and then can see that the processes that you'll implement and the curriculum that you develop is focused and solely designed to get more of the type of people that they need.
Yeah, absolutely. So in a moment, I want to ask you about sort of the change management aspect of this, and how mindsets might need to change when you move into this kind of way of thinking about talent management. But before I do, Dan, I know you've had some experience in this area, and you might want to share a couple of ideas here.
Sure. In terms of some tactical ways to make some of the business case and also the business buy-in happen, Matt, I know that you and I have run a couple of rapid design workshops together at a couple of your organizations, and at Interactive Services, we work with a lot of large organizations where the managing the change is a challenge just due to the scale. So what we've found works really well are what we call rapid design workshops, where we bring end users, operators, SMEs, stakeholders, HR, talent development folks, legal into the same room for maybe 2 or 3 days to align and make sure everyone's really clear on the business need, agree the roles most likely to move the needle on the business need and the behaviors required of those roles. But then over the course of the 2 or 3 days, lead the group to map out the high-level framework so there's a feeling of shared ownership of the solution. And then critically, as a group, present to senior leaders towards the end of that process, and without shame or embarrassment, give them a show, let them see the energy, excitement, and alignment of quite a significant cross-functional group, and really make sure business leaders are seeing the value of the 2 or 3 days, so that what you're doing there is you're reducing perhaps 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months of business alignment down to 1 week. You're creating a shared sense of urgency. Hopefully over the course of the 2 or 3 days, you found your champions and started to build a buzz. And I think some of those events kind of being placed as almost like tactical hand grenades. So you're really creating a big buzz within the organization at the right time, at the right moments, I think is critical for getting some of that business buy-in and building a shared sense of the business solution.
Yeah, Dan, that has been a crucial and invaluable tool that I've used as I have built the business case for talent management process. A couple of things that you mentioned. One is getting a disparate group together of stakeholders that can speak to the needs of the organization in terms of strategy and talent. So what do we need in terms of talent, or how do we need to improve in terms of talent to help with this portion of the organization or this portion of the strategy? You can really use that as an opportunity to build a burning platform, right, or to note everyone to the burning platform, and then invite them to help craft the solution to get off that platform. It is creating pull for talent management work as opposed to push. And the other huge benefit that you get from that is then you have 20 some odd highly invested individuals in the organization that aren't in HR that can then go back and advocate for the work that you're doing, so that it's no longer a talent management or a learning development or an OD or an HR initiative. It's their initiative, and your role is simply to provide expertise, subject matter expertise in process. Doing so becomes invaluable. In fact, if you go to the next slide, there's a nice little summary of key things that should be a focus for a talent management executive moving forward. One is to create that pull. Create pull within the organization so that the business has a voice of translating its strategy into a talent strategy. The other thing that you have to do is you have to define governance and the philosophy behind those governance. Who owns the process? Who owns data? Who owns decisions? Who implements those solutions? Those are important pieces of work that talent management executive has to work through. The talent management organization should own best practice. However, they should cede some of that responsibility for vetting best practice. Bring in disparate groups, those that are influenced by or accountable for executing that talent management process, to let them give it a reality test. So if you are implementing a new selection process, you own that selection process as a talent management professional. However, your best bet is to vet that with those that actually have to execute it. When you talk about solutions, what you just described, Dan, is to collaborate, is to feed some of the development of the content to those that have to live by that content. You should boundary set it, and you should bind it with best practice. However, a bad idea that everyone agrees upon is actually more powerful than the best idea that no one had say in. And so making the delivery solution aspect of talent management collaborative will get you a lot. Finally, manage change through your governance and solution building mechanisms. So one of the things I did at a previous organization is we created a talent council that was made up of executives from around the organization who met on a regular basis to help guide talent strategy. Now, they weren't involved in building out talent process. They weren't helping us design new onboarding programs. However, they were the individuals who said, we need a new onboarding program because we need that type of talent. This is the type of talent we need, and we know that onboarding is a point of pain. And so we chartered that organization to help us, to help influence our talent management strategy. We then were able to use them as change agents in the organization so that they could go back and champion with their peers the new onboarding program because they had a vested interest in its success. By the same token, bringing together a group to help articulate the design of the onboarding program allowed us another avenue of change management, individuals that had their DNA in the development of the programming that we could then use to help ensure its success.
Matt, you talked there a couple of times about bringing the right folks to the table to collaborate early on. I sometimes feel the mistake that organizations make is they fill the room with very senior leaders. And I think there are moments or are meetings where clearly you need senior leaders to be there and driving the conversation, but I think often the end users or the frontline operators are absent from the conversation too much. And you mentioned earlier, you talked there about Southwest Airlines. You know, I can envisage a conversation earlier on being had in a business in which a couple of frontline operators brought to life the spirit or the tone or the behaviors that Southwest were looking to deliver on in the future. And there's nothing more powerful than having your frontline operators or your end users bring to life the spirit or the behaviors that the business is looking to align to. And I sometimes think that when senior leaders see those hourly associates or frontline operators kind of embodying the behavior, then it's gold dust in terms of aligning folks to what would otherwise have taken several dozen PowerPoints, meeting and conversations to create a shared understanding of the end results.
I agree. I think you have to have both of those groups play in the right space. You need your executive leaders to have a direct say and influence over the direction of the talent strategy. So what kind of talent are we looking to know, grow, and move, and where do we cut in as we start to build out processes? What are our greatest pain points? Is it selection? Is it onboarding? Is it succession planning? And let them be the ones that guide what kind of talent do we need, and where do we cut in to shore up our talent process. You need the voice of the front line, of the individuals that actually are responsible for executing those talent processes in the building of the programming, because they are the ones that have to utilize it, and they are the ones that can give it the sniff test, as well as build credibility for that content within the organization. Previously had a program that we developed in conjunction that had an element in it that executives pushed back on. It was the way we were positioning the organization as that in terms of internal branding that executives pushed back on until we showed them the voice of their people who were the ones that designed the idea to begin with. So the specific example was it was a large geographically dispersed organization with unique business units that were individually branded. The thought for executives was we want to maintain that local branding. We can't, we don't want to pull the curtain back and say here's the parent organization. When we brought the staff together to help us from all over the organization to help design the content, they were unequivocal in their desire for a unified brand. Our ability to go back to the executives and say, this isn't our idea, this isn't our desire, this is your people's desire. And so, we can do whatever you want. However, know that making another choice is actually counter to what your organization's workers are asking for. It changed the tenor of the conversation very quickly, and frankly, was a different direction than even I would have picked. But because it was bespoke by the organization, it was powerfully implemented.
Thank you so much, Matt. So we're heading towards the end of the session. I'm going to ask Matt one last question, and while I do, and while he's answering, anyone who has a question for any of us, please put it into the chat window now on the webinar, and we'll do our best to answer it before the end of the session. I suppose, Matt, my question is, in summary, it sounds as if this is really about a mindset change for the organization to start to see talent management as strategic, and you've done a fantastic job of explaining not only what that looks like, but how to start to make it happen. What do you think is the single biggest mind shift that people have to make if they want to go on this journey? How does the organization have to think differently in order to make this work?
The most important thing that the organization has to come to terms with is talent as a strategic lever. As an organization is looking to achieve its strategy, that talent is one of the most critical levers that an organization can pull to help achieve that strategy. That's the mindset that you have to embrace. Most organizations on the surface will understand that. However, it is the work of the talent management executive to make that concrete and to demonstrate the influence and the power of the right talent in the right roles, doing the right work.
Okay, thank you. And there's a question just come in, which is actually it's something I was thinking of as you were speaking, and it was around ownership. You spoke a little bit about ownership, and one of the things that occurred to me is as you start to define competencies that are more strategically aligned, then my guess is they spread out of talent management in terms of training and development, and they spread into recruitment as well. So it actually changes the type of people you want to bring in, and you gave the Southwest Airlines example there. The question that's come in is there a case for ownership of strategic talent management to be in operations versus HR? Maybe you could speak very quickly again about that ownership piece. Where does it end up living, strategic talent management? Who ends up owning it?
Great question. Practically, it's most likely a human resource function, just because it is about the people. It's about the people that you're bringing in. However, governance of the talent strategy should live in operations. It should live in finance. It should live in whatever other elements of the organization. So in my organization, in healthcare, clinical leadership, governance of the talent strategy should live in all of those camps. And so someone needs to be guiding that strategy and bringing those disparate voices together. However, I think that kind of the real gist of that question is it's really about governance, and the best chance for your talent strategy to take root and to take hold is to feed that governance of it to the organization, so that they can articulate what kind of talent they need.
Fantastic, thank you. So we're drawing to the close. I will just remind everyone that Matt is a published author. Neil, do you want to just bring us on to the slide where they can see the books that are available? These are available on Amazon, and I'm sure in all good bookstores. Please do take the opportunity to avail of them. And then finally, just to say thank you, Matt and Dan, for your support today, and particularly Matt for helping us to understand not just the fundamentals of talent management strategy, but also how to start thinking about implementing it in your organization, which really means building a business case for the strategic elements of talent management. And as Matt just said, really that initial mindset shift is that it can be strategic in the first place. If anyone who's on the webinar would like to learn more about this or hear about more of our award-winning global learning, please visit the website or contact Dan Brown. His details are up on the screen now, but we'll do a follow-up with the deck to anyone who's joined today. So thank you again, Dan, Matt, and Neil, for helping to run the show, and everyone who joined us today. Thanks so much for giving us your time, and we hope to hear from you soon.